Hello everyone. It's really great to have you all here today. And I want to dive into a really important topic that so many of you have contacted me and us for help with. And I think with the amount of changes that are taking place on the planet today, and also what's happening on such a deep internal level for so many people, this is going to be like a survival guide, a lifeboat, a life raft for you when you are going through this process. So what I'm going to be talking to today is what is an ego death or an identity crisis or a phase of outgrowing another layer of your identity. How do you recognize it? What actually is taking place? And how do you get through it? And if you can have a context to be able to see what's actually taking place for you whilst you are in the experience of it, this is going to give you so much more power, so much more freedom, and even maybe more peace to be able to navigate yourself through one of the most powerful moments of transformation that we as human beings can continue to keep going through. And you know, one of the greatest gifts about being human is that we're, I would say, the only animal in the animal kingdom that has the ability to die and be reborn multiple times in one lifetime. That is our superpower. That is our gift. We have a human mind that has the ability to perceive itself, to see its own self, which means not only does that cause us enormous amounts of suffering and pain, but if we can shift our relationship with our own mind and have a sense of what's actually taking place, we are the only animal in the animal kingdom that can shift our own consciousness and evolve and mature our own sense of self, which is really powerful. And that is why this video is going to be such a life craft for you. So let's dive straight in. Firstly, how does it even feel like, you know, when you're going through an identity crisis and you're going through an ego death, that phase in your life where suddenly how you've known yourself and ways that you have perceived things and ways that you have acted and ways that you have being able to stay in control or some sense of control just suddenly don't seem to be working anymore. In fact, it feels like you're lost, like something is literally dying inside, and it feels like you're having some kind of a breakdown. And most of the time, if you aren't conscious or aware of what's actually taking place in the relationship that you have with your own sense of self and your own identity, you might think that you are having a breakdown, and you might make that a really big problem. And then you may get caught up in the drama and the fear and the terror of that. And then you might think that you're broken and there's something wrong with you. And you may even go to people that will then feed that story that you're broken and there's something wrong with you. And you can hear the spiraling that track could take you down, which is not only hugely disempowering, but it feeds you more and more into being a victim, which is where you have no power. So it's really important that more and more of you and us can start to recognize what's actually taking place, both on an awareness and a consciousness level, but also on an experiential level, when we are going through these huge phases of transformation. So step one, point one, you are not broken. You're not failing. You're not falling apart. You're not actually lost, even though it will feel like you are. It will feel like you can't find anything that you can hold on to anymore. And it may even feel like you are losing your mind. And I say it that way because I've heard so many people use that phrase. I feel like I'm losing my mind, Nikki. And I'll say, well, yes, you are. You're losing an aspect of attachment and identification that you have had with your mind, and it can feel like you're losing your mind, meaning you can't seem to stay in control. It feels like you're hugely destabilized. Sometimes it can be as deep as like someone has taken the floor out from under you and you can't find anywhere to stand or land or anchor yourself. And your mind will take you through like a grasping, desperate, gripping phase of trying to stay in control or trying to find things to hold on to because you're experiencing this enormous destabilization, because that's what the mind will do. That in fact is the mind's job, is to ensure that you are able to survive and continue surviving long enough so that we don't go extinct. That's what the human mind's design is for. But of course, what's taking place when we're going through an ego death is we're actually beginning to outgrow another layer of survival patterns, of survival ways of being that we've known ourselves, a survival sense of self. And so we don't want to survive. We want to live. We want to mature beyond these layers and perceptions of survival that we thought were the only options that we have. So in a way, it's counterintuitive because the mind is going to be attacking and it feels so painful. And you're experiencing like you're lost and you have nothing to hold on to and like you're losing your mind. And you can see how easily you might start to think there is something really wrong with you. But there is not. This is the beginnings, the potential of the beginnings of a huge phase of transformation, of maturation. You're quite literally maturing, or you're being invited to mature in your entire relationship to who you think you are and to your sense of self and to your identity. And that is the beginning of not just the possibility of changing how you feel about yourself or how you perceive yourself, but that is the beginnings of the possibility of actually creating an entirely new reality for yourself, or an upgraded level of reality, or a mature level of reality. And that's good. That's called growth. That's called evolving and maturing. That means there's an alive movement happening of growth and change for you. And it has to happen on a deep identity level first. So let's take a sneak peek at what's going to be coming up in this video and what I'm going to be covering. So I want to talk a little bit more into what actually an ego death is, like what's actually happening in the mind and in the nervous system and in your whole body-mind system at all, and how to tell clear signs that you are going through an ego death. I also want to cover why it feels so destabilizing and painful, which in itself is so counterintuitive to that being a good thing, because it doesn't feel good at all. In fact, it doesn't feel remotely comfortable. And in fact, it feels painful and hard. I want to talk about how to navigate this process consciously. You yourself learning how to drive this ship as you're in the middle of the storm, which that in itself is going to mature the levels of trust that you have in yourself and the levels of trust that you have in life. And then I want to talk about the difference between your survival identity and this new paradigm that you're stepping into or growing into, maturing into, and what actually is dying while simultaneously opening up the possibility of something so new, so unfamiliar, and how that is the beginning of something amazing, another amazing phase for your life. So what actually is an ego death? Really, what's actually happening? What's taking place in your body-mind system, in your entire system? What's actually taking place, rather than just it feeling like it's awful and you're having a breakdown and something is terrible and something bad is happening? So for every human being, around 3-4 years old, as part of the stages of our human development, we start to mature into having a sense of self that is a me, is an identity. Before that age, we have predominantly our sense of self as experientially. So as toddlers, we experience our sense of self as emotions. When we're in early baby phase, we experience our sense of self as physical sensations, wet, cold, hungry, real animalistic survival, physical sensations. And so you can hear that through these early stages of our self, our sense of self continues to mature. And when we get to around 4, and then it keeps deepening and refining until post-adolescence, we begin to get our sense of self as a me, as a someone. When I asked my son when he was 3 years old, "Who are you?" he would say to me, "Oh, I'm me." But he didn't really have a sense or an image in his mind of who me was. When I asked him at the age of 5, "Or who are you?" he would say to me, "Oh, I'm Callum." And I could see that by the time he was 5 and I asked him that question, when he perceived himself, he saw a Callum. He had an image in his mind, a self-image in his mind. Now, of course, where is that self-image? Where does that come from? It comes from the experiences of our environment, of our childhood, through the perceptions of our mother, through the perceptions of our father. But it is the beginning of the perception that we have of who we think we are. We see ourselves as a me. And if you think about it for a moment, you think of yourself, you think of yourself. You actually see an image in your mind of yourself given by the perception of what you have absorbed and inherited in the memory bank of the mind. Now, everything of the human mind is designed for our survival. It's only designed for our survival. And survival is not living. Survival is just trying to make sure that we don't die today, or trying to make sure that we don't get abandoned today, or trying to make sure that we don't get rejected, or we don't get humiliated, or we don't get unloved or unwanted, or we don't not fit in the pack. Whatever the root of that survival is, the function and the design of how the mind works for every one of us is the same. And that is to ensure that we can survive. So essentially, this identity, this sense of self, this perception of ourself as a me is, in some traditions and methodologies, would be called the ego. I would call it the me. Regardless, it becomes how we perceive who we think we are without us realizing that that self-image of who we think we are was given and shaped as a reaction to our environment and childhood and early years, and perception through mother's eyes and perception through father's eyes, and everything that we've absorbed and inherited from mom and dad and our environment. And so we don't realize, it's a blind spot, that this me that we identify with has a function. It's so that we can survive whatever felt unsurvivable from our past. And that may be something small, from not being seen, to something big like abuse or trauma or addiction. Regardless, if you're human, it's the same design. So what's actually happening in an ego death is another layer of identification and attachment that you and your entire system has had on how you perceive yourself and how you know yourself and how you even wake up every day into that self. That starts to become destabilized. It's like maybe you've hit a point in your life where something has created a shock, or something has challenged you, or something has created a break of some sort that has shocked you enough to start to question what just appeared as completely normal and the way it was before. And so another layer of blindness, unconsciousness has been shaken awake. And that can happen through collective trauma, or it can happen through a breakup or a health issue, or you losing a job or making a big mistake, or something will happen in your adult life that directly triggers something from your early years. Regardless, it will feel like something has just broken you awake. And then once that awakeness of a new way of seeing yourself happens, it's like you can't go back, because another layer of blindness has dissolved. And then that completely activates an entire, what I would call, healing process, maturing process in your entire system. It's like the nuts and the bolts of what has just been so fixed and solid have been loosened. And so the whole system starts to destabilize. And so what's actually dissolving or dying is your perception, your identity, your attachment to a way of knowing yourself. And up until that moment of dying started to happen, or dissolving started to happen, you couldn't even see what you thought of yourself. It just appeared as if that was just the way you are. So it's like someone has come and cleaned your glasses, and suddenly you're seeing things about yourself that you just couldn't see before. And another layer of your survival identity is starting to destabilize. Now, when I say it that way, it's actually an amazing thing. It doesn't feel amazing, because that layer of survival identity has been useful to you at some point. It may be layers of needing control, or needing to always be working, or needing to always be loved in a particular way, or needing to always be confident, or whatever it is. There was a purpose to it, and it would have been driven by a need to try and survive something. So if that starts to destabilize, the very first thing that will start to happen is you'll start to experience all the reasons why that layer of survival has even had a need, had a purpose, which is you're likely to start to feel things like fear, losing control, worthlessness, shame, embarrassment, or another layer of what you didn't even know that you've been hiding about yourself, and what you've been sitting on for a long, long time. And when these attachments to these layers of your identity start to destabilize and loosen, it is like a direct threat to the mind. So the mind will start attacking. No, warning, warning, warning. This is not a good thing. Hold on tighter, control more. You can't let this part of yourself go, because it's not safe. It's not safe enough for you to survive. So you can hear how counterintuitive this is. And that brings me to point 2. Why is it so painful? Because when that layer of your identity, or the attachment to that ego and the identity, is starting to dissolve, everything that it was suppressing will come up. The fear of losing control, the powerlessness, the like you're falling off a cliff with nothing to hold on to. And the mind will attack. Noise, 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 noise. And it will feel like you're losing your mind. Now you can imagine why so many people would find it hard to recognize this as a healing process, because we don't get educated this way at all. So many would be told that there's something wrong with you. You're suffering from depression. You're broken. And we don't get taught how to find our ground in the center of this storm, which of course is a massive stage of maturing in our emotional intelligence and emotional maturity, which is a really, really empowering moment for you in how you have a relationship with yourself and your life. That's why it's so painful. But how on earth do we navigate ourselves through something that feels so awful? When you are being flooded by terror that's been stuck in your nervous system, maybe since you were a little child, or powerlessness that's been literally frozen in time in your system from 40 years ago, worthlessness from when your mother couldn't see you, or losing control and being out of control because your parents are addicts. Whatever it is, it will feel painful. So how do we even navigate ourselves through this in a way where we don't collapse into it and it completely takes over and we identify with the pain and the destabilization? How do we have a relationship with it that somehow we can hold it whilst it's happening? Now, that is not easy, but if we can learn how to do that, it will literally change your life. That will change your relationship with yourself for the rest of your life. Because if you can do it once, you'll never forget that you did do it. And then you'll trust yourself a little bit more the next time it happens and the next time it happens. And that is the beginning of an enormous phase of maturation and emotional maturity and emotional intelligence and trusting yourself. So, first step, recognize that the attack of the noise of the mind and the flooding of the emotions that are literally unfreezing out of the nervous system is not you. This is not who you are. It's happening to you, but it is not you. It's literally a mechanical mind that is trying to do its job to ensure you stay in survival. And it is an unfreezing process that's taking place in your cellular energetic structure and your nervous system. So you're starting to feel what you didn't even know that you didn't even know you were suppressing. So it's actually a healing process when we can be with the past that is coming up in the present without collapsing into it and without trying to resist it. It heals. It can literally start to release so it doesn't stay frozen and stuck anymore. So first step, to be able to recognize what may be taking place for you. That's the first one, because then at the very least, you can hold some level of awareness that you're not broken, you're not messed up, there's nothing wrong with you, you haven't done anything wrong, you are in an ego death. And it is the beginning of a huge healing process. Step 2, don't resist experiencing what's coming up. When human beings can experience their human experience, it moves. It's when we resist our human experience and we try to suppress it and manage it and control it, it stays stuck, and it stays stuck forever. So this is your opportunity to let yourself feel how much terror you didn't even know that you didn't even know you were sitting on, how much worthlessness, without getting lost in it. What you are feeling is old. It is not from now. It will try to trick you that it has something to do with now. It'll try to trick you that it has something to do with your partner or your job or how the world sees you, because that's the nature of how the human experience tries to color and project onto how reality appears to us. So staying conscious, whatever is coming up for me is old. It feels real and I need to feel it, but it is old. It is not to do with now. And learning how to listen. Learning as much as you can from this process. Wow, I understand now why I have tried to control so much, because underneath I have felt this deep powerlessness. Oh my goodness, I understand now why I have chosen partners that I have, because whenever I'm distracted in those dramas with them, I haven't had to face how worthless I have been carrying, this pain that I've been carrying. Start to learn as much as you can out of every single aspect of what this process is showing you and revealing to you and bringing out of the unconscious into the conscious. The more you learn, the more you'll mature. Your perception of yourself matures. Your experience of yourself matures. Your whole relationship to yourself and your world matures. And so it's a huge upgrade that's starting to take place, and the potential of an upgrade that can take place. You know, the caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly by working harder. The caterpillar completely surrenders. It quite literally dissolves into liquid. The caterpillar is no longer there anymore, even though the butterfly and the potential of the butterfly already exists. Its destiny as the butterfly already exists, but in order to bring that into existence, the caterpillar needs to completely dissolve, not hold on to some parts and let go of others. It's like full surrender. But surrender with consciousness, surrender with holding yourself, surrender with awareness of what is. What I'm experiencing is the old, lower frequencies of my false self, of my story, of my ego, of my survival identity. What you'll start to notice is that if you can hold the context of what's taking place for you, you'll find a stillness in the center of the storm. And being there will change you forever. You're not here to live from your survival for the rest of your life. You're not here to stay the same. Growing and evolving and maturing is part of our destiny. It's part of our power. And so choose the experience rather than letting it victimize you. So that's the first video that I think and I hope will be helpful for you, you know, and of course, understanding what's taking place for you can give you a context to be in a relationship with it, and how to recognize it can give you more power on how to navigate yourself through it. But understanding all this isn't enough for learning how to then live your life from the shift and to create a whole new version of yourself and a whole new way of being in yourself, and how that can change your actions and how that can change your choices, and then how that then gives you your new 3D reality. So the first step is understanding this, and the next step is, right, how do I integrate this so that it becomes embodied and integrated, that how I behave, how I think, how I choose to be shifts. And that's what I'm going to be teaching you in the next video. So click here below to watch the next video where I speak about how to integrate and embody this shift so you can start standing and leading from a new place to stand. And of course, that's the beginning of alchemizing your entire 3D reality.